I remember the smell of disinfectant and the quiet hum of machines more vividly than I remember the pain. That hospital room, with its pale blue curtains and beige walls, had become my world for nearly 3 weeks. I had landed there after a brutal accident, a hit and run while I was crossing the street one rainy night after work. The car had broken my ribs, shattered my left leg, and left my spleen hanging by a thread. I didn't remember the impact, only waking up to a nurse's voice, the weight of tubes in my arms, and the sterile cold. The first few days passed in a blur of morphine and mumbled conversations with doctors. But I kept thinking about her, Samantha, my girlfriend of 4 years, the woman I believed would be by my side through anything. We had plans. We talked about moving in together, about adopting a dog, about maybe, just maybe, getting married, once we had more money saved. So when I finally got a hold of my phone again, still half numb from the pain meds, I called her. She didn't answer. Not once. The next day she sent a text. "Sorry, been busy with work. You okay?" That was all. No heart emoji. No offer to come by. Just that flat, indifferent line. I tried to believe it. Maybe she really was swamped. She was a graphic designer for a startup and sometimes her deadlines piled up. But still, after hearing I'd been nearly killed, how could work possibly come first? The nurses were kind, but they couldn't replace her voice, her touch, the way she used to run her fingers through my hair when I couldn't sleep. I felt a hole widening in my chest every day I didn't see her. Then one evening, after a CT scan, I got back to my room to find my sister sitting by my bed, her face tight with something I didn't recognize right away. Not pity, not worry. Anger. "Don't check your Instagram," she said, almost immediately. "But also, maybe you should." My hands trembled as I reached for my phone. I hadn't opened the app in days. When I did, the notifications exploded. Comments, tags, messages from mutual friends. And then I saw it. Samantha, dressed in the emerald dress I bought her for her birthday last year. Sitting at a rooftop bar I didn't recognize. Sitting on the lap of someone who definitely wasn't me. He had his arm around her waist, like he'd known her for years. She was kissing him in the next photo. Openly. Passionately. I don't remember breathing for a long while. The pain in my leg vanished, replaced by something sharper, colder. Betrayal doesn't hit like a hammer. It seeps into your bones. It makes you question every moment you thought was real. Every kiss. Every whispered, "I love you." I lay there in silence, my heart breaking beneath the steady beeping of the monitor. My sister leaned in, her hand on mine. "She's been seeing him for a while. We didn't want to tell you in the hospital. But you should know. You deserve to know." I didn't cry. I wanted to. But the tears wouldn't come. Just silence. Emptiness. I stared at the ceiling, trying to piece together when it started. Was it during our last argument, when I told her I didn't want to go to her cousin's destination wedding because I was saving for a down payment? Was it before? Was she already pulling away and I just refused to see it? She didn't visit. Not once. But her new boyfriend did, though he didn't know it. 2 days later, I asked the nurse to bring me my laptop. I began to sort through my finances. Bills were piling up. Insurance wasn't covering everything. I was going to be out of work for months. And Samantha and I had been sharing an account for certain things. Our streaming subscriptions, utilities. From the old apartment we still co-leased even though I'd been staying more often at my place. I hadn't removed her name from anything yet. A plan began to form. Not out of spite. Not at first. But out of necessity. And maybe, later, out of something else. I started slowly, methodically. I wasn't thinking about revenge. Not exactly. It was survival. I opened the joint accounts, looked through the shared subscriptions, the credit cards that still had her name attached. We'd built our life together with a certain trust, layering things together, Our Netflix, Hulu, Spotify, Amazon Prime, the furniture we bought together, the mattress we split the cost of, still technically hers on paper because she'd insisted. She'd pay off the final installment. I didn't touch anything that would have caused trouble. I didn't steal, I didn't hack, but I noticed something. Her new boyfriend, his name was Logan, I found out, had already started moving into the life I'd helped build. I saw it through subtle signs. The shipping notifications going to our old apartment, the increase in food deliveries that I wasn't ordering, the Uber receipts pinging late at night from clubs I never went to. She hadn't removed me from anything, either. She just forgot I was there. Maybe she assumed I wouldn't notice. Maybe she didn't care. At first, I stared at the Uber Eats bills in confusion. Why was Thai food being delivered to our apartment at 1 a.m.? Who needed 6 bubble teas? Then I started noticing the Amazon orders. A gaming headset I never ordered. A brand of protein powder I didn't use. After that, it became clear. She had already made herself comfortable with him. In my absence, in my pain. I scrolled through my bank transactions like I was flipping pages in a book I never agreed to write. A new story was unfolding, one where I was barely a footnote. I was just the guy in the hospital bed paying for their Friday night dates, their movie nights, their takeout. I even paid for the parking ticket Logan got downtown one weekend. He must have borrowed her car, the one I helped her buy, the one still listed under our insurance. I closed my eyes and let the fury rise slowly, like water filling a room. Then, I opened them and started crafting the most polite, legally sound shift of responsibility I could. The next day, I made a few calls. I spoke to our insurance provider and had her name moved to the primary driver on the car. I updated the billing contact for our shared utilities to her email. I unlinked myself from the subscription accounts I no longer used and transferred ownership to her. It wasn't vindictive. It was efficient, calculated. Every dollar I redirected was a dollar I could use for my recovery. Every expense I no longer had to pay was space to breathe again. But it wasn't enough. Then came the hospital bill. It was a monster. Several pages. Long columns of codes and numbers that didn't mean much until you reached the total. Nearly $68,000. Insurance would cover some, but not all. The out-of-pocket portion was still in the tens of thousands. I stared at that number with a kind of dull horror. I'd nearly died, and now I had to pay for the privilege. Then something occurred to me. Samantha had once added me as a dependent, on her work insurance, back when we were living together full-time. It was a decision we made together to save money, since her company had better coverage. We'd filled out the paperwork, listed each other on emergency contacts, submitted the beat forms. I still had the PDFs on my computer, and unless she had removed me, which I would soon discover she hadn't, her insurance could be billed first. I double-checked everything, every clause, every timestamp. She hadn't updated her file. Maybe she forgot. Maybe she thought I wouldn't notice. Maybe she never expected I'd be in a hospital bed with shattered bones and a ticking invoice. So I did what any rational, broken-hearted man would do. I handed the entire bill to her insurance provider. I filled out the form with all the attached documentation, faxed it, emailed it, followed up with a phone call. They said they'd process it, that if it cleared, the deductible would go to her plan's out-of-pocket limit, her premiums, her responsibility. That meant her account. Or if she still shared finances with Logan now, possibly his too. I didn't hear from her until 3 weeks later. It was a Tuesday afternoon, sunlight pouring through the window, casting long lines across the scratchy blanket on my hospital bed. I had just finished another round of physical therapy, my body sore and trembling from the effort of walking 6 steps with a walker. I was sitting up, spooning bland mashed potatoes into my mouth, when my phone buzzed. It was her, Samantha. "Why the hell is my insurance being charged for your hospital stay?" I stared at the screen for a long time, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. She hadn't asked how I was, not once. No apology, no kindness. Just fury. Entitlement. I set the phone down for a few minutes, breathing slowly through the rising heat in my chest. Then I picked it up and typed calmly, carefully. Me. Because I'm still listed under your coverage. You never took me off. I called and checked. They confirmed I'm eligible. Your plan was always better. You remember? I watched the typing bubble appear, disappear, reappear again. Her next message came rapid fire. Samantha. You did this on purpose. This is insane. I'm not paying for this. Me. Then take me off your plan. But until then, this is what coverage is for. The next message took longer. Samantha. This is low. You're being manipulative. I stared at that word. Manipulative. After months of sleeping beside her, after all the shared dreams, after the brutal silence during my worst days, now she found her voice. Because she'd been sent a bill. I didn't respond. Not right away. I let her sit in it. Let her scroll through the receipts I had seen. Let her boyfriend Logan wonder why a hospital claim had landed on her doorstep. Maybe he'd ask questions. Maybe he wouldn't care. But I hoped quietly that he would. Later that night, she sent another message. This one more measured. Samantha. Look, I didn't mean to abandon you. Things got complicated. I didn't know how to handle everything. Logan and it just happened. I was confused. The message was longer, filled with half apologies and carefully phrased regret. But it was too late. Something inside me had already broken and reformed, harder, colder, resolved. She hadn't been confused when she was ordering pizza on my card at 2 a.m. She wasn't confused when she posted pictures with him, when she let him walk into the life I built. I read her words, then locked my phone and closed my eyes. I drifted, off to sleep that night not with anger, but with a strange, hollow peace. Sometimes the people you trust the most become the ones who teach you what trust really costs. It was strange how quiet my world had become. The beeping of the machines, the shuffle of nurses' shoes, the mechanical whisper of the IV pump, those sounds became my new constants. But inside my chest, there was this roar. A quiet, endless storm. Samantha's betrayal had cracked something in me, and through the break, the truth kept flooding in. Every moment we'd shared began to twist. Memories warped like photographs soaked in water. Distorted, washed-out versions of the reality I once believed in. I had time. That was all I had, really. Time to think. Time to feel. Time to dig through 4 years of history and wonder which parts had been real. I remembered our weekend trips to the lake. The way she used to fall asleep on my chest while we watched horror movies. How she used to text me goodnight even when we were in the same apartment, just for the hell of it. I remembered the birthday party I threw for her when she said she didn't want one, only to cry when she saw the lights, the balloons, and her friends gathered in our living room. I remembered how I had kissed her forehead that night and told her, "There's no part of my future that doesn't have you in it." And now here I was, left behind, broken, healing inch by inch, while she built a new future with someone else before I could even walk again. The hospital released me 2 weeks later. I left on crutches, in a brace, with a plastic bag of medications, and a binder of follow-up instructions. My sister helped me get home. Not the apartment I once shared with Samantha, no. That was her domain now. I moved back into my old place, a small, dim studio that smelled faintly of the books I never finished and the life I thought I'd left behind. It was like stepping into a version of myself I hadn't seen in years. I didn't talk to Samantha again for a while. I let her messages sit, unread. Let her guilt stew in the silence. I didn't want to hear her excuses. I didn't want to see her face on a screen. She'd made her choices. All I could do was live with the consequences, and let her live with them too. But I did keep watching the transactions. Oh, the beauty of shared digital footprints. I saw every meal Logan bought on her card, every bar tab, every movie rental. They were spending my money. Still, I had disconnected my part from most things, but some accounts remained tangled. She hadn't yet figured out how many little threads still linked us. Or maybe she just didn't care. There was a moment, a specific night, I remember, when something inside me truly changed. It was around midnight. I couldn't sleep. The pain in my leg was a dull throb, the kind that mocks painkillers. I sat by the window, watching the streetlights flicker against wet asphalt. And I opened her social media page again. I hadn't done it in weeks. I thought I'd weaned myself off the habit, but there they were. Photos of a wine tasting event. Samantha in a velvet dress, standing beside Logan laughing. Her smile bright. Her eyes closed like she was lost in joy. He had his hand on the small of her back. They looked like they belonged in a magazine ad. Find your bliss. That kind of staged perfection. But I noticed the caption. Something stupid. Something shallow. Healing is loving yourself first. Healing. She had used that word. I nearly threw the phone across the room. Healing? While I was piecing together my bones with screws and wires? While I was waking up in cold sweats, from dreams of being hit again, of metal bending into flesh? While I was clawing my way toward independence one agonizing step at a time? That was the night I decided to respond. Not to her, not directly, but through action. There was still one last account I hadn't touched. The old shared credit card. It had been used sparingly for months, but it was still open, still active, still tied to our names. I had always paid my half, like clockwork. She was usually late, but I covered it when I could. It had become background noise. Until now, I logged in, looked at the latest activity. A new leather jacket, 2 tickets to some festival in the city, an Airbnb booking under her name, $780 in total. And I recognized the dates. The weekend of what was once our anniversary, they were going away. Together. So I called the card company. I explained that I was no longer part of that account, that I had no intention of being financially responsible for charges made without my approval. I played up the confusion, the emotional stress, the recent hospitalization. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell every truth. They said I'd need to initiate a formal dispute if I wanted to be removed. I agreed, sent them all the necessary documentation, and with one click, I froze the card. The next day, the texts started. Samantha, what the hell did you do? The cards declined. We're stuck here with no gas money. I didn't reply. Samantha, this is not okay. You're being childish. Still, I said nothing. Samantha, Logan's pissed. We had to borrow money from a friend. This is so effed up. I smiled, just a little. Not out of cruelty, but because for the first time, I felt like I had some control, like I wasn't just a body in a hospital bed or a ghost she left behind. I was someone who could still affect her world. Someone she couldn't just erase. A few days later, she showed up. It was early evening. I was limping to the mailbox when I saw her car. She stepped out, hair perfectly straightened, makeup a little too heavy. She looked nervous, like someone walking into a courtroom. She stood there awkwardly as I stared at her from the sidewalk, clutching the metal crutch like a lifeline. I just want to talk, she said. Her voice was soft, unsure. I didn't say anything. Just looked at her. I didn't mean for things to happen like this, she continued. You have to believe me. I was overwhelmed. I didn't know how to deal with everything. You were in the hospital and I felt helpless. Logan was just someone who was there. I tilted my head. So, you replaced me? Her eyes welled up. It wasn't like that. I loved you. I still, I don't know, I'm so sorry. I let the silence stretch between us. I could feel her unraveling with every second I didn't speak. Finally, I said, "You know what hurts more than getting hit by that car? Waking up and realizing the woman I trusted most couldn't even sit beside me when I needed her." She sniffed. "I thought I couldn't handle it. I thought I'd fall apart." "You did," I said. "Just in someone else's arms." She started crying. Real tears. Ugly ones. But I didn't move to comfort her. "I'll pay the bill," she said through sobs. "I'll fix this, I swear." "No," I said. "You already did. You paid it the moment you chose him." She looked confused, broken. Maybe for the first time she understood what she'd done. I turned and walked back into the apartment, crutch scraping across the threshold. I didn't look back. That night, I slept more soundly than I had in months. After she left that evening, I didn't hear from her again for a long time. Not a text, not a call, not even a passive-aggressive like on an old photo. Just silence. And silence, I came to learn, was a kind of mercy. The days that followed were strange, heavy with a kind of calm that didn't feel like peace, but like the tail end of a storm. When everything is still dripping, branches still broken, the wind echoing in your ears even though it's gone. I focused on my recovery. I pushed harder in physical therapy. Every ache in my leg became fuel. I took the pain personally, as if my bones were angry with me for not standing up for myself sooner. I went back to work part-time from home. The same desk where Samantha used to sit across from me, scribbling in her sketchbook while humming whatever indie playlist she loved that week. Her favorite mug was still in the cabinet. A chipped white ceramic with "Design like a girl boss" in faded gold. I didn't throw it away. I didn't smash it like I imagined I would. I left it there, let it become just another object in a life I was rebuilding without her. And Logan? I never met him. Not once. Not face to face. But I knew enough. I pieced together who he was through her social posts, through the names on the shipping labels that arrived at the old apartment, through the bar receipts he never bothered to hide. He was the type of man who took over like ivy, quiet at first, then everywhere. He was the kind of man who didn't mind living off someone else's comfort, who settled into a life someone else paid for and called it love. Samantha let him. Or maybe she needed someone who wasn't broken. Someone who could stand and dance and drink and laugh when I was lying in a hospital bed counting ceiling tiles between doses of morphine. Maybe she didn't want to be a caretaker. Maybe she never could have been. And maybe, just maybe, if the roles were reversed, I would have failed her too. I don't know. I'll never know. But I lived through it. And she didn't stay. It took 3 more months before I could walk without assistance. 3 months of aching knees and pinched nerves, and waking up in the middle of the night because my leg refused to let me sleep. But I made it. I walked again. I even ran, slowly, with a limp that might always stay with me like a scar that hides beneath jeans. By then, Samantha had faded like a stain in old fabric. Her memory dulled. Her betrayal stopped feeling sharp. It became a chapter, not the whole book. Then, one morning in early spring, something unexpected happened. A letter. Not an email. Not a DM. An actual letter, sealed in a white envelope addressed in her handwriting. I stared at it for a full 5 minutes before opening it. My fingers trembled as I slid the paper out. I recognized the faint scent of the perfume she used. To wear. Jasmine and something sweet I never learned the name of. The letter wasn't long. She wrote that she was sorry again, that she had learned a lot about herself in the months since everything fell apart. That Logan was gone. He had left her, ironically, not long after their anniversary trip, apparently upset about the financial mess she now found herself in. He'd moved out in the middle of the night, she said, after an argument about rent and groceries. She wrote that she understood if I never wanted to speak to her again, but that she had finally started therapy, that she was trying to grow, trying to take responsibility. And she included a check. It wasn't enough to cover everything, maybe a quarter of the hospital bill. But it was something, a gesture, a flicker of dignity in the ruins of our story. I didn't cash it. I didn't rip it up either. I just folded it back into the envelope and placed it in the drawer beside my bed. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It's remembering without hate. A few weeks later, I went back to the coffee shop where we used to spend lazy Sundays. I sat in the corner booth with a journal and a pen, my brace finally gone, my posture straight again. I watched people move, around me. Lovers, friends, strangers, and I realized something that hit me in the center of my chest like truth. Samantha had taken a part of my life, but she hadn't destroyed it. She hadn't stolen the future. She had simply stepped out of it. And I was still here. I finished my coffee, left a tip on the table, and walked out into the sun. That same day, I took one last look at the digital footprint she and Logan left behind. I canceled the final shared account, deleted our old photos from the cloud, blocked her number, not out of anger, but out of finality, out of the deep understanding that some stories are better left closed. And as for Logan, I don't know what happened to him. Maybe he found someone new to sponge off. Maybe he finally learned to pay his own way. Maybe one day he'll end up in a hospital bed of his own, and someone will ghost him while he lies helpless, staring at the ceiling, wondering where it all went wrong. I won't be there to find out. But I do know one thing for sure. In the end, he picked up the bill, and I walked away with my spine intact, my pride reclaimed, and a heart stitched back together not by her apology, but by my own endurance. And that was worth every cent.